Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Veal Farm Tour. My name is Ashley Scoons, and I work on behalf of the Beef Checkoff to educate about beef and veal farms here in the United States. Today's virtual tour is funded by our beef farmers and ranchers as part of the Beef Checkoff program. We encourage you to participate in today's event and would love to answer all and any of the questions that you have. If you are joining us via Zoom, please note that the live chat is disabled, but you can submit your questions and comments at any time by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you are joining us via YouTube, please note that the live chat is turned off, so you can just sit back and enjoy the trip. But if you do want to ask questions, please go back to your reminder email and join us via your Zoom link. We're excited to share a little bit of the veal industry with you all today. Veal is a nutrient-rich meat produced from mostly male dairy calves. It's a light pink protein with a very mild flavor. Most of the veal farms in the United States are found in the Northeast in states like New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana. Across these states, there are only about 500 milk-fed veal farms here in the United States. These farms are small family farms, on average only raising about 400 calves a year. And we're going to hear a little bit more about the calves and what their lives are like on the farm in a little bit. Today, we're visiting a farm in Pennsylvania with our friends from Marcho Farms. Marcho Farms is a vertically integrated veal producer based in Sutterton, Pennsylvania. Marcho Farms is the largest veal producer in the United States. The company was started by Wayne A. Marcho in 1967 and is still family owned and operated today. Today specifically, we will be touring the veal farm of Joseph and Anna Swary. The farm is located in Jersey Shore, Pennsylvania, and is home to about 300 veal calves at a time. The Swarries have been raising veal calves with Marcho Farms since 2013. And like many veal farms, Joseph and Anna are Amish, so for religious reasons, you'll not see them on the farm tour today. However, you will see the excellent work that they do in caring for their calves. Joining us on the farm will be Dr. Sonia Arnold and Darrell Brown. Dr. Sonia is the animal nutritionist for Marcho Farms. She manages all of the feed and nutrition programs for the veal calves. Darrell Brown is one of 3 servicemen at Marcho Farms. He works very closely with each of the farms in his area to provide support to the farmers and ensure that the calves are healthy and growing well. With that, we will join Dr. Arnold and Darrell at today's farm.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the farm here in central Pennsylvania. So, as Ashley said, my name is Dr. Sonia. Darrell is here with me, and we're here at Joseph and Anna Swary's farm here in Jersey Shore. So today we'll give you a tour of the farm. We'll show you a little bit talk about the calves, talk about the feeding of the calves, and all that goes into raising veal. But to start out, first, I'd like to just give you a little bit of history on the veal industry. So the veal industry really started in the United States in the 1950s and 60s. And the veal industry, you can think of it as a partner industry with the dairy industry. So first, you have to think about the fact that the dairy farm is really their goal is milk production, right? Their whole deal is basically production of milk. Well, in order to produce milk, a cow first has to have a calf. And so every year, dairy cows are having about 1 calf a year. Some percentage of those calves will be heifer calves or the female calves. Those will be raised by the farm, and usually they'll eventually enter the milking herd themselves. And then some proportion of the calves are also male calves. So there's 2 options for these male calves. They can go into the veal industry, or they can also go into the dairy beef industry. In either way, they enter like a meat production supply chain. So when veal first came into the United States, it settled in the states where dairy was prevalent. And at that time, that was the mid-Atlantic region. So think Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin, everything around the Great Lakes. You have a lot of water for the cows, also for the calves, and a lot of cheese production going on there as well. So the main inputs for veal production are the calf, obviously, and then also the byproducts of cheese production is the base for the milk replacer formula that we will talk about later. So the calves will come into the veal farm, when they're about a few days old, about 100 pounds, and we'll raise them for at Marcho Farms here. It's about 5 months, and at that point they'll be close to 500 pounds. So we will just take you for a walk here and kind of show you the calves. So just give me a minute while I turn my camera around. Here we go. All right, I will hand that off to you, and we'll go down this way. So these are the calves. This barn is set up. We have essentially 4 aisles of calves. We'll walk down one aisle here to show you what it looks like. The calves right now are about 15 weeks old. So they weigh between 350 to 400 pounds right now. So just keep that in mind. They came in early mid-June. And so from June until now, they went from 100 pounds up to about 400 pounds. So these calves they're eating well, they're growing well. You'll notice that the calves are housed in pairs. So here at Marcho Farms, we use the buddy system for our housing. So so everybody has a buddy in their pen with them they're together. The same 2 calves are pretty much together the whole time. You'll notice too, all of the calves in the barn that you'll see are all Holstein calves. They're all the black and white, typical dairy breed that you see. If you're driving around Pennsylvania, you see, or if you visited a dairy farm, if you're familiar with dairy farms, Holsteins are the most prominent, most common breed of dairy cow in the U.S. And so they are the main source of the Veal calves. That's where it helps for consistency to all have the same breed. It also helps them all get along. They're about the same size. So that's what you'll see as you walk through here. You'll also notice all of the calves have an ear tag that helps us on the farm to identify them and to track them through the system. Make sure that if any calf in the time that they're on the farm does need treatment, we're treating the right calf, and we can track that and make sure that we keep up with that calf and follow up and make sure they recover. It also helps us to make sure that we know where the calf came from the original source all the way through the system to the end. So again, these calves are at the end of the production cycle. They'll be 20 weeks old, so they have about 5 weeks that they will still be in the barn, and they'll gain another about 100 pounds by then. So over that 5-week period, that's kind of our finishing period, and that these calves will be even bigger than they are right now. So they'll be pretty big animals by the time they're done. So actually, I'm just going to take a pause. Are there any specific questions about the calves, where the calves come from, or that we can answer at this point?
The only question that we have had is just how calves are housed. Calves are housed specifically now in the veal industry. Do you just want to touch on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So
how they start off in individual pens.
Yeah, that's a good point. So right now I mentioned that we use the buddy system here at Marcho Farm. So when they first come in, the calves are sourced for veal. These calves are being sourced generally from auction barns. In some cases, there might be a direct relationship with the dairy farmer, but many times they'll be coming from auction barns and buying stations. And also, if you think about the Mid-Atlantic area and think about the size of dairy farms in the Mid-Atlantic area, we tend to have smaller farms, family-sized farms. And so to get, like, this barn has 300 calves in it, and it was all filled in 1 week. We got 300 calves and filled the whole barn. So to get that number of calves, they come from a variety of different areas. This group of calves that we're looking at right here might represent close to 300 dairy farms potentially. And so when they first come in, we actually will keep them in individual pens, more similar to what you would see potentially on a dairy farm. You'll see the little hutches, which each calf has his own pen. In these barns, the way that works is that we have a divider that would be placed right here. So right now these calves are together. When they first came in, they each had their own space. And that then allowed them to get acclimated. And if either one of them did experience some disease, it helped to keep, so that they were isolated, and helps to prevent the spread of disease throughout the barn. And it also really helps as far as treatment of and keeping the calves, helping to keep them healthy, to if they do get sick, to get them healthy again. And then by the time they're about 10 weeks old, between 8 and 10 weeks, at that point, any major diseases have been taken care of. They've been treated. They're doing good. They're acclimated. They're used to the environment now. And at that point, then we pull the divider out. It's just basically a gate that would be right here. We'll pull that divider out, and now those two calves that have been next to each other this whole time, now they are together and they can share the space. So we find that works really well. They're herd animals, so they do like being together. Even when the divider is here, it's not a solid panel. They can still see each other. And so that helps with helping them to feel comfortable. So that's how they progressed all the way until week 20 at the end of the production cycle. So, and that's relatively common. That's how, like I said, we do 2 in a pen here at Marcho Farms. There are other veal companies that'll do 8 in a pen, but it's the same idea where they'll start out in an individual pen just to get them acclimated and get them settled. And then once they're settled in, then they would go to the larger groups. Any other questions, Ashley, on the calves specifically?
Nope. No other questions on the calves specifically. If you just want to move back towards the center of the barn now, so our video stream stays well as well, and then you can move on to our next.
Absolutely. So the other thing I want to touch on as we're looking through the barn is you'll see that the sides of the barn are completely open. You can see the wood and the fields and everything in the background there, and the yard. So all of these barns are what we call naturally ventilated. So it allows throughout the year, like right now, it's a little wet today, but it's relatively warm. We can have they're actually curtains. So the curtains will go up and down depending on what the weather requires. Today they're completely down. And so the whole side of the barn is completely open. It allows for a lot of natural airflow, lots of natural light to come through. In the winter time, those curtains will be all the way or close to all the way up. There will be a gap at the top to still allow that natural air to come through, but it allows us to actually heat the barn in the winter. I believe all of the classes that are joining today are also in Pennsylvania and New York, so you know that it can get pretty cold in the winter. And so we like to, especially for the young calves when they're first coming in, we want to make sure that the barn is comfortable for them. So we will actually heat the barns so that they're between 65, around 65 degrees. If it's a younger calf, will be a little bit higher. If it's an older calf, will be a little bit lower. Because the older calves they're bigger, they're a little bit better at, they don't need it quite as warm. You can think of the same idea as if you have a little baby in the nursery, you want to keep it nice and warm, but the teenager doesn't necessarily need that. So that you can think of it that way. Another thing you'll notice in our pens is that there's no bedding in the pens, but you also will notice how clean the calves are looking at them. So that we have these slatted floors. You'll see the orange, it's called tenderfoot. So that is a rubber coating on there. It gives the calves good grip when they're standing up and laying down. It makes the laying surface really comfortable. And it also allows any manure, any waste to go straight through the floor. And there's a pit under there that gets flushed, and that just keeps everything away from the calf. It also allows for really good air quality in the barn. So it prevents things like any insects that would be in the straw bedding. If we used bedding, we would have that risk. And then it just keeps everything so much cleaner. So that's why we use that flooring. Some of the other things that you'll notice is so we have the basins and we have the troughs. That's how the calves will be fed. So these calves will be getting milk replacer throughout the entire 20 weeks. If you're familiar with the dairy calf system, normally on a dairy farm, calves will get milk replacer for about 8 weeks, and then they'll get weaned over to a starter grain of some variety, and they'll continue on grain and forage. In this system, we actually keep them on milk replacer for the whole 5 months, and then we'll feed grain alongside that as a supplement. And that actually is a very natural diet. If you think about the beef calf, you usually wean beef calves around 5 to 6 months. So it's a very natural progression for these calves. And the grain allows that rumen development to occur. So we do have a very normal, natural pattern of development and growth for these calves. Any specific questions on facilities, Ashley, that I forgot to cover?
There was just one question just that they were really interested in explaining the benefits of low stress on the calves, which I think is one of the things that the facilities do. So if you just want to highlight those things in the facilities one more time about what provides that low stress environment on these farms.
Yeah, so stress can come from a lot of different things. Facilities is one, nutrition and health obviously is another. And really we don't want these calves to be stressed. I mean, there's some obvious reasons. We want them to grow well. We want them to be healthy. We don't want to be treating a bunch of calves, and any amount of stress just piles it on. The likelihood of having a sick calf is a lot higher. The likelihood of the calf not being able to grow efficiently or not be able to perform efficiently, all of those things become questions whenever the calf is under a lot of stress. And also, for the manager too. The manager, especially of a barn this size, you have 300 calves. If they're stressed out, you're going to be stressed out too. So some of the things that we do to just make sure we minimize the stress on these calves. Like I touched on the air quality. The air quality is a big one. That's a big issue, especially when it comes to respiratory disease. We want to make sure that they can breathe well and they've got a lot of fresh air. So that's a big one when it comes to facilities. The other thing is access to feed and water. And we'll touch on that a little bit more, but you can see as we walk through, you can see that the grain is always in front of them. The water is always in front of them. And then cleanliness. Cleanliness, I think it's underrated a lot of times, but if your calf is just matted in manure or just uncomfortable, that is going to add to their stress level. So that's where that tenderfoot comes in. And that's where there's the cleanliness of the slatted floors. And one other aspect of the tenderfoot that I didn't mention that relates to stress is that the calf has to feel confident when they lay down and when they stand up, that they can confidently get up and down. If they don't feel like they're going to be able to stand back up easily, they're going to be much less likely to lay down. And that starts to wear on the body as well. If you have, if you kids have ever been busy all day long, you've just been running and going, it feels really good to sit down at the end of the day sometimes. And so, or another example, like if you're playing soccer, if you're playing basketball or any of those sports where you're just go and the whole time when you're on the field, feels really good to sit down at the end of the game. And that's the experience that these kids have. If they have to be standing all day because they're just afraid to lay down, it's going to wear on their legs, it's going to wear on their joints, and it's not going to feel very good. So all of those factors are pieces, just different pieces of the facilities that all play into the stress level that the calf experiences. So, all right, so we will change gears a little bit and talk a little bit about the feed. So let me first show you how we prepare feed. And this is something I think if any of you have some familiarity with dairy farms or feeding dairy calves, it's kind of similar, but it's just on a larger scale. So this here, this is what we call our mixing tank. So it's stainless steel. That means it's easy to clean. It's easy to get any residues off of it whenever we're done with it, which is really important. Whenever you're dealing with milk, you got to make sure that everything stays clean. It's a great medium for growing bacteria otherwise. So this is what Joe Sori, when he's feeding the calves, is going to use this twice a day, every day. Right now, with this number of calves, he's actually probably using this mixer maybe 2, maybe 3 times for one feeding. And that's just because of the number of calves and the volume that he needs to mix. When he starts out at the very beginning, they're not eating quite as much. They're a smaller calf. He's probably only making 1 mix. But as they grow, they eat more. And so he's going to be, by the time he's done, he's definitely going to be using it 3 times, twice a day. So we use a milk replacer. All of our milk replacers here at Marcho Farms are designed for meeting the nutrient needs of the calf. So at the very beginning, we have a starter milk replacer. You won't see that in this barn because of the age of the calves, but the starter milk replacer is a little bit higher in protein, a little bit lower in fat. We're really trying to build bone, try to build muscle, and get that frame set up so that the calf is ready for the finishing phase. So the milk replacer we have here, Darrell just showed you, that is our builder milk replacer. It's also, you think of it as a finisher. It's still got a decent amount of protein in it, but it's a little bit higher in fat. So that ratio changes just to finish the calf out. At that point, we kind of have the frame, the bone structure is there. We're just finishing the calf out. So to give you an idea, so this is the powder. And again, this is all from Marcho Farms. We make our own milk replacers. It's made at our facility. And then everything that the calf receives is all the same program. So we try to be very consistent. Calves love consistency. The milk replacer is always mixed at the same temperature. It's fed at the same temperature. And like I said, there's a starter and there's a builder. So it doesn't change very much. And it helps, that consistency just helps them digest it well and helps them to grow well. So what would happen is that we would fill the tank about half full with water, so about up to here, really hot water. This milk replacer, and different milk replacers are different. Our milk replacer needs to be mixed at a pretty hot temperature. So we'd fill it halfway up with water, and then we would add the powder. Now, right now, again, the calves are 15 weeks. So right now, Joe Story would be using almost 2 full stacks of bags of milk replacer. So about 20 bags of milk replacer for one feeding for this group of calves. So there's 12 bags on a stack, so it's not quite a full 2 stacks, but just to give you an idea of how much milk replacer he'd be using right now. And then in addition to that, he's also feeding grain, and he's probably using about 15 bags of grain. All these bags are 50 pounds. So that just gives you an idea of how much feed these calves will eat in a single day. So the grain is offered free choice, as you saw in the troughs. It's a mixture of oats, corn. It's got some pellet in there for the vitamins and the minerals, some protein, and a fiber pellet as well. The whole mix is balanced so that it can be fed just as is. It doesn't need it. It's not a TMR. It's not something, well, I guess it technically is, but it's not something that requires additional mixing on the farm. As you would see, if you guys have been to a dairy farm, many dairy farms will have a mixture that they're using. We're adding a whole bunch of different ingredients and they're mixing it all together on the farm. This comes in a single bag. It's ready to go as is. And then multiple times a day, it might be three or 4 times a day, Joe Sorry or one of the other family members will come through. They'll put that grain in the trough for all the calves, and then they'll spread it out and make sure that every calf gets what they need. So between the milk replacers and then the grain, it's a lot of feed, but it's everything the calves need to really grow and to thrive. It meets all of their nutrient needs and all their needs for growth and health. So one thing that is really important nutritionally, just to touch on for veal calves specifically, is iron. And so everything is nutritionally balanced to make sure that we meet those iron needs and to make sure that the calves at no time, we don't ever want a calf to be anemic. If the calf gets low in iron, that really affects their appetite, it affects their health, it affects their ability to fight disease. We don't ever want a calf to be anemic. So we make sure the grain has everything it needs, and then the calves get an additional supplement of iron just to make sure we never get too low. So, Ashley, any other questions on the feeding, on the milk replacer, on the grain?
Nope, not quite yet. We did have one question on just facilities. They were curious about what the size of the pens that we're looking at are.
Okay. They're 60 inches, so that's 5 foot by 80 inches. That would be the dimensions. So I think we're do some quick math on what that gives you for square foot, but we're looking at 60 inches, so 60 inches wide, and then 80 inches long. And these are really set up. We want to make sure that at any time in the growing cycle, the calves have plenty of space, stand up, move around. They should be able to do, do a circle in there without a problem at any time. So that's decent, decently standard. I think you might find some that are a little bigger, some that are a little smaller, but that's what these pens would be. Some others, I think it seems like about 45 square feet is becoming a little bit more standard as well. But anywhere in that range is about right. So the key though is keeping the calves comfortable. The key is that the calves can stand up confidently, move around confidently. They don't feel like they're cramped, right? We don't ever want a calf to feel cramped. Again, it just all comes back to that stress level. We don't want the calves, if the calves feel like they can't move, that's just gonna add a level of low grade stress to them. It's just completely unnecessary. So we always want to make sure the calves can move around freely, can scratch the back of their heads. We don't want to have any inhibitions on their ability to do whatever they would normally do, right? And sometimes we wonder about things that they normally do, but we want them to be able to feel like they can do whatever they need to do. So any other questions on anything we've covered so far?
Perfect. Nope. That's so far no other questions. You can move on to just talking about veterinary or any final topics you had to cover.
Okay. All right. So the last topic I do want to cover is a veterinarian. So again, I said about we want to make sure the calves are healthy. We want to make so we do that by making sure that everything is clean. We want to make sure everything is all the milk replacer is mixed correctly. Make sure they're getting good digestion. And again, I said about cleaning, just to touch on that point again, I to come back around to that again, I talked about the tank being stainless steel, and this is really important when it comes to cleaning. We don't want to have nooks and crannies or chips and things where bacteria can get in and grow. We want to make sure everything can be easily scrubbed down, easily cleaned. So when he goes to clean this, it gets cleaned after every single feeding. And the way that he will do that is he'll use the same stuff that you would use for cleaning milking equipment. So you'd be scrubbing it with a good soap, a good detergent. He'd scrub it down, and then he's going to rinse it with an acid, make sure that any mineral deposits are gone. Everything gets scrubbed down, cleaned, and sanitized. And all the way down to the hose here that he would use to feed, to the nozzle he's going to use, that actually would go into the bucket. So that gets scrubbed down every day. And the whole system gets washed. And actually, I forgot to mention, but if you could share a little bit, if you haven't already, shown the footage of how the calves actually get fed. We do have some footage on that. We're not going to do it right now. They've already had their morning feeding, but we do have some footage just to show you how that's done. So if you can roll that to show everybody.
Sonia, yep. So we're sharing some of that footage again here now. We did get one other question though.
Yeah.
Which I guess we glossed over. And someone asked if all the calves are steered, if they're castrated.
Oh, that's a good question. So no, actually, that I would say is one benefit of veal as opposed to the dairy beef system. Because it's a 5, maybe depending on the company, 5, maybe 6 month process. They do not get castrated. They do not get dehorned. You'll see you may have noticed on some of the calves that we were looking at, they do have little horn nubs. So neither one of those processes need to happen or do happen in the veal industry. If these calves went into dairy beef, both of those processes would need to be done. But as it is, because of just the length of the production cycle, we don't have to. That is actually 2 processes that tend to be very, very painful processes that just don't, and they just don't need to be done for veal. So that's actually a huge benefit for these calves. No, all of these calves are fully intact, and all of them still have their horns. the last piece that I do want to touch on then is just some of the vet care. So we do have a veterinarian that helps us with all of our procedures. They come around twice a year. They visit every farm. They do training with the farms so that everybody is aware of what symptoms to look for, common calf foot diseases, how they should be treated. This is our grower manual. It's actually based on the Veal Quality Assurance Program, and it covers everything from some good management practices, again, trying to keep the calf healthy, but also covers treatment protocols. So if a calf does show symptoms of disease, we want to make sure it gets identified correctly, treated quickly, and that calf gets up and going as fast as possible, and experiences minimum discomfort, minimum pain. And so that's a very important part of the program. Again, we do use antibiotics, and we try to use them as judiciously as possible, but at the same time, we want our calves to be healthy. We want them to grow well, and there's no reason for a calf to experience pain if it's not necessary. So but we are very careful with it. And so that's what these are for. So every barn has one of these so that they have it for reference, and then they can access it in the case that they would have any questions like that. And then, again, we use probiotics, we use supplements, vitamin and mineral supplements. Again, the main thing is to make sure that the calf doesn't get sick. That is number one. If the calf does get sick, obviously we have, the veterinarian's guidance for that, but the goal would be to keep them healthy, that they don't get sick. So any other questions? Anything else that we can cover?
So we have about 5 minutes left. So we did get just a few general industry questions if you just want to touch base
Sure.
on that.
Yep.
So just a few before we wrap up here. We had some questions about just the veal industry in general in the United States. So if you want to just touch on you did touch on the region that we are, but about how big the industry is from an AVA perspective possibly, and also imports as well.
Sure. Yeah. So just a big picture. So again, I think veal started in the U.S. in the 1950s and 60s, and it really started to. It's almost a sustainability project initially, because we had a thriving dairy industry in the United States, but we really didn't have a great solution for the bull calves that were born on those farms. We also didn't have a great solution for what to do with the byproducts of the cheese production. That we were making a decent bit of cheese at that time. And when you make cheese, you also have this product that's called whey. And the whey it's only about 10% solids. And of that, not very much of it is protein, but there is some protein in there. And at that point, nobody really had a great idea of what to do with it, but it's an excellent source of nutrients for calves. And so the veal industry was kind of born to use these two byproducts, and it thrived. We had probably the heyday of veal when the industry was at its biggest was in the 1970s and 80s. And that was probably at that time, U.S. consumption of veal was close to 2 to 3 pounds per person per year. And then as time went on, there was the industry changed. I think for one thing, the dairy industry got very good at utilizing whey. Actually, if you have been to a grocery store and you see whey protein concentrate now, it's actually a premium product that's out there for muscle, gaining muscle, building muscle, and it's a really great healthy protein. But that is a market that didn't exist before, and so that quote unquote byproduct has become a premium product. The other thing is that the U.S. beef consumption has really increased since that time as well, and the beef herd has grown, the supply chain has grown, and so the dairy beef supply chain has become a much bigger use of the dairy bull calf as well. And so the veal industry has gotten smaller. Right now, we're probably killing or probably harvesting about 125,000 calves for veal each year for formula-fed veal, which is what this is. So it's not a huge industry, but it is a very important industry, and I say especially important to the Mid-Atlantic region, to Pennsylvania and New York, to areas where there's a lot of smaller dairy farms, because those dairy farms really need to have that market for their bull calves, and they don't have the volume of bull calves that the dairy to really work with the dairy beef industry. And if you think of where the beef industry is located in the US, that's mostly in the West. So there's a lot of trucking that has to happen to get a Pennsylvania calf all the way to Colorado or Kansas. But the veal industry being right here in Pennsylvania and New York, it's an excellent market to partner and support those smaller dairy farms and just one more way that we can keep those smaller dairy farms really operating efficiently. So I think that touches on most of the general industry things. I know there was a question specifically about how many calves are harvested each year, and I double checked that this morning. So 125,000 is about right for annual veal harvest. And actually, you mentioned about imports. So yes, veal. The idea of veal came from Europe, and there's still a very big European and Canadian veal industry as well. And so there are veal. Quite a bit of veal is also imported into the U.S. Actually, right now it's veal meat production in the U.S. and imports from Canada and Europe is probably about 50-50. So just to give that perspective. But everybody out there, if you're buying veal, you should definitely make sure that it's American. So support local. Anything else, Ashley, that I can touch on that we didn't cover? I don't want to run us out of time.
I think we could just wrap up now with just if there's any final thoughts you'd like them to leave or that you want to leave them with before we leave today.
Sure. Yeah. So first, I want to thank everybody for participating. Thank you so much for this opportunity to show you a veal barn, and to show you the calves and talk a little bit about what we do. It is, like I said, it is a small industry, so we're not huge, but we are in your backyard. I know most of the classrooms joining are from Pennsylvania and New York. That's our bread and butter. That's where we're located. That's where veal has found its home. And so we appreciate we just appreciate you guys being here today. And I hope that as you go out and as you see veal, perhaps in the grocery store, perhaps on a restaurant menu, that it just gives you a little bit more information, and feel free to give it a try. As Ashley mentioned earlier, it is a very tender meat. It's an excellent eating experience. And we want to supply that demand. So we hope that this gives you the confidence to go out and give it a try. Talk to your parents about it. Tell them that's what you want. It's your next birthday. And so, yeah. And so we hope this just gives you a little bit of light, a little bit of glimpse into, what we do and how important it is for us, as far from the calf raising standpoint, but also from the, we want to create an excellent product, and we hope that everybody enjoys it. So thank you again for this opportunity, and take care.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Arnold and Daryl, for bringing us to the farm today. With that, I just want to let you guys all know that, you will be receiving some links. Please visit veal.org. There's a lot of information there about veal and the industry and recipes as well to enjoy veal. So thank you very much for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.